Awesome. Pleasure to welcome to the podcast Connor Hollison, owner of Adaptive Goaltending. Connor, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the story of the first time you jumped into goal. You remember that?
Yeah, I do. Pretty well. I was in sixth grade, so I didn't formally start playing lacrosse, but I hopped in a lacrosse goal in sixth grade. It was like PE or something. And basically because I'd played soccer goalie before, so it just kind of made sense. I got thrown in the goal and I wanted to play goalie. And I loved it from the beginning, and it it's just obviously it's grown from there. I played Division One lacrosse. I have this goalie training business, and yeah, I've loved it since I started playing it. So I'm not
Yeah.
one of those guys that was forced into the goal because I was bad at shooting or running. I've always loved goalie.
What is it about the position that you always loved, do you think?
Oh, I think it's kind of hard to uh, describe exactly, but I really like the individuality of it. It's
Hmm.
kind of its own world. So the way I try to describe this to people is that there's the sport of lacrosse, and then there's the sport of lacrosse goalie. And you could probably say that about soccer, hockey, whatever. But lacrosse goalie is kind of a separate sport from lacrosse. We have our own training, we have our own drills, we have our own way. Everyone thinks we're weird, so we're seen as like this different entity in the sport, even though we're a major part of it. It's like its own separate world, and I kind of just like being part of that smaller community, I suppose.
Same here. Same here. Yeah.
Yeah.
The wild, crazy community of lacrosse goalies.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the training is so unique, right?
Yeah.
And more like especially when you combine it with the mental piece, that us goalies have to learn as well. Like that physical element combined with that mental. I don't think anyone else is
100%. Yeah.
yeah, is training like that.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Park City, yeah?
I moved here when I was 13,
Okay.
but I was born in Georgia. I've kind of lived all over the country, but I really started playing lacrosse when I was 13 in Park City, Utah.
Yeah, and I know like nowadays, Utah's becoming somewhat of a hotbed, right? With the
Oh,
growth
yeah.
of Utah's, University of Utah,
Hmm.
the Archers. What was it like when you were 13 and like how did you go about, getting goalie training?
Uh, that's a great question. It was not like this at all. There was very little lacrosse. There was good lacrosse, good, at the time in that context at like maybe five or six high schools. There
Okay.
was like some decent lacrosse. Um, that I had no formal goalie training, honestly, up until like the end of my high school career. So I taught myself how to play goalie entirely on YouTube. So, um, I'm sure I looked at your channel at some point. Uh, I'm sure, and I looked at there were like I what comes to mind is like Scotty Rogers even.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Adam Gittleman had some stuff out there,
Right.
but just kind of random. I just taught myself. I would watch highlight tapes and try to copy what they were doing. I'd try to watch smaller goalies because I'm smaller. So yeah,
Yeah, me too, brother. Me too. That's where
yep,
Adam Gittleman comes into play. Yeah, he posted a bunch of good stuff, and I know
yep,
I probably watched those Scotty Roger videos myself.
yeah,
50, if that video has 100,000 views, I'm 10,000 of them.
yeah.
um, how did if there's a goalie that I mean nowadays there's a lot more resources. Your page, my page, Goalie Smith's page, a lot of
Yes,
lot
sir.
of guys putting out cool stuff. But if you're a goalie in that scenario where it's like, all right, I'm going to teach myself, like I'm going to teach myself. How do you do that? What's like, do I just go to YouTube and I type lacrosse goalie tips or, tricks or
Well, that's a good
basics?
start.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely more complicated than that. What I would do, I don't know what anyone else did who taught themselves. I would set up a camera and record myself and make sure I was moving how I saw it in the videos.
Mm.
So I think a lot of people will just train and not think about how they're actually moving. That was kind of my solution is I would just record myself. I'd look at it, I'm like, oh, I'm dropping my hands. Like you literally just like playing wall ball or whatever. I would just record myself going through the motions. Now, that was not a perfect system because when I got to college, I basically got ripped into for 3 years about how I had technical flaws, but I got pretty far. I got all
Yeah.
the way to a Division
Yeah.
One school without really any formal goalie training. So it was I worked really hard. I
Yeah.
worked harder than almost anyone I can think of. Uh, and that was the fundamental core of why I think I made it anywhere in the lacrosse world was my work ethic because I certainly did not have the size, talent, or athletic ability as most of the kids I was playing with. So for
Yeah.
me, that's what got me to where I got.
Well, I want to touch on that, but
Sure,
before that, yeah, just like that idea of copying the movements, I think is a really key one because,
sure,
when you watch video of like a young lacrosse goalie, like you can kind of tell that they're, they're young and they're inexperienced just by the way that they move. And not only like you mentioned the dropping of the hands, and yeah, that's
sure.
a key element, but it's also just the way you move around the crease, like the kind of the way that you prep for a shot, like the way you move in the save movement. And I think
Yeah,
like the more that you can, just watch those Brett Dobsons and, watch all those top college guys and just kind of replicate those moves. And the more that you can like look like them, the better you're going to be. Right.
I
It's
would
kind of a
say
cool
so.
way to think about it.
Yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
again, it's not the end all be all solution. It's definitely it's much better to have a human there telling you. For me, that worked better. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you can get pretty far for sure.
Of course. I mean, so this, yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, it's always like, if you got someone there real time
Hmm.
who can call out, those things and you can kind of feel it and fix them real time, always the best.
Yep.
But of course, that is a luxury that not all lacrosse goalies have. And
Yep.
as the growth of the sport has become larger and larger, like, more are in the scenario of not having that goalie coach. So that's kind of,
Absolutely.
who this is for.
Yeah.
Um,
That was kind of the fundamental basis of creating my page, I would say, my idea is to create something that I would have liked to have when I was younger.
right.
So because I was able to scrap together like teaching myself how to play goalie, but it took a lot of effort and a lot of research. And I'm basically what I'm trying to do with my page is make it so that people can click on my page and have access to all the information they could possibly need. That's kind of the idea.
Nice. What
Yeah.
post do you think? What are the like top 5 things they should look at first, in your opinion, on your page in particular?
I have some older videos that I thought this was before I had any followers really, but I thought it was really useful. I broke down, must have been like 5 months ago. I broke down how each save should be not should be, but could be, we'll say, fundamentally made. So I had one video
Oh
for
yeah.
stick side high, stick hip, off hip, etc. And I
Yeah.
kind of broke down my entire thought process in each physical movement of the save. And
Nice.
so from like how I move my hands to how you actually step to what I do with my hips and my chest and my body, I kind of broke that down in each video. I thought that was pretty useful.
Yeah, that does sound useful.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of times like I had a goalie coach or I went to camp when I was like I think I was in college, and he was just saying that like yeah, like there's all those different types of saves, right? Stick side high and stick side off stick high and the hips and
Yep.
the low and the 5 hole. But like when the shot's coming at you, like you can't be thinking about like 6 different options. You
Oh
kind of
no.
got to be thinking of like one option. And so
Yep.
the way he tried to describe it was like there's only one shot. It's the shot coming at you. And like,
True. Yeah.
all the things then would be equal. Like my top hand would always go to the ball, would always find the ball, direct line to the ball, right?
Yep.
My back foot would always dry. But I'm curious are there any like tips in one particular area that you think are like, oh, this was so helpful. I can't believe I didn't
Yeah.
learn this
Okay.
earlier.
That's a great question. I'd say my coach, Coach McMahon, Andrew McMahon, my head coach at the University of Utah, taught me the next two things I'm going to tell you. So credit to him, not me. A lot of goalies, coaches I've heard or even seen on the internet teach this concept of either stepping laterally, stepping at a 45-degree angle, or stepping at the shooter. You'll hear all of those or some variation of that. And the the concept he drilled in my head was all you want to do is step in a way where you get your body behind the ball because the whole point of stepping is to get your body behind the ball. So
Right.
whatever path that is, take that path. So if
Okay.
so if that's lateral, great. If the shooter has less angle and it's you're stepping straight at him, that's great too. So don't overthink where you're stepping necessarily. Just get a piece or your whole body behind the ball,
Yeah.
and the rest of it will take care of itself. That was that really changed how I thought about that a lot
Yep.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, there's a lot of debate about that lateral versus the 45. And I
Yeah.
know probably when you were, when I was growing up, like it was, you stepped out of 45, like you always stepped out of
Yeah.
45, and maybe you were taught that way too. But now you see a lot of guys do the lateral. I think you can have success with both, but yeah, I mean, I think
Me too.
there's a certain um place where like lateral makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure. Like
Yeah.
if the shooter is top center and it's going straight into the bottom left corner, maybe maybe take a little shuffle to the side.
Yeah.
Sounds a little smarter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You said there was two things.
Oh, that's right. He, I don't know how widely taught this is, and I actually have a hard time teaching it myself because it's a bit vague. But five-step arc, low arc, mid arc, high arc, right?
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah,
typical way of teaching how to play your arc.
yeah.
He agrees with that when players are passing the ball around, okay? But when a shooter is dodging, I might just like, do you care if I just stand up and show this? I
I
have
mean,
room.
not only do I not care, I would highly encourage it.
Excellent, because it will be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, by the way, I'll caveat that by saying if you're just listening to the audio, head on over to the YouTube and check
Yeah.
out the video.
Yeah. So I'll move. I got my lacrosse stick just for
Okay.
fun.
Yeah,
And then can you see my feet?
I can.
Okay. So instead of going like top left, top right, pipe right, if the shooter was like, let's say top center, right where you are, dodging
Yeah,
to the left down the alley,
yeah.
he he taught us to take like these small little mini micro steps and just basically keep yourself straight on the shooter,
Interesting.
with your hips square to him.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, for me and most of our goalies, I've taught this, and the goalies on our team, that kept us in the perfect position. So I'm
Interesting.
not sure what that is or how exactly that works, but it seems like once you get that five step arc down,
Yeah.
that it's a little bit more of an advanced technique, obviously. You can implement that into your game. And the advantage of that is that on the five-step arc, you have to take kind of a big step in between the five spots.
Yeah.
Those smaller steps, you're always ready for the shot. So you'll never get caught moving when the shooter takes a shot. You'll be square and still.
Yeah.
And for me also, it helped me not go too far over to the far pipe, which is pretty common on an alley dodge.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So uh I was Mike G, right? You know Mike G, a Princeton goalie. Now he's
Yeah.
Gianfrancaro. So he did a presentation, and he was like, his whole idea was like on the sweeps, he would essentially like beat the shooter to the spot. So the guy starts to sweep, and
Yeah.
like I think one of those Scotty Rogers videos we were referencing earlier, he talked about like sort of trailing the
Yeah.
shooter,
Waiting. I remember that.
waiting,
Yeah.
yeah, waiting, right? And I think there's some logic to that because you don't want to get to the pipe too quickly to give him that far side because all the shooters love to pull it across their body and try and hit that. But
Hmm.
but Mike G would say like as he starts dodging, like I know, in those first like 4 or 5 steps, he's probably not going to shoot. Like he's going to shoot,
Yes.
if we're here, he's probably going to shoot like when he gets to there. So like as he starts to dodge, I'm going to set up like sort of there, and just sort of
Oh.
beat him to that spot. And it was kind of
And
an
then you're
interesting,
still.
yeah. And then you're 100% still. Not only like
Yeah.
you've beat him to that spot,
Yeah.
um, and it's an interesting concept that I was like, wow, like I've never heard it explained like that. I have heard what you demoed right there, and I think there's a lot of merit to that as well. It sort of limits your movements, and so if
Yeah.
the shot comes, like I'm always going to be set. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if you
I
got any
know
thoughts.
it's super interesting, and I'm not. I don't think anything's 100% correct, especially in the lacrosse goalie world.
Yeah,
It's basically it's too hard and there's goalies that are successful that are 5'6", and then there's
right,
goalies 6'7" that are successful.
right,
I like soccer goalie; they're almost always like 6'2" or taller, right? Because in
exactly,
order to reach that post, you just have to be tall,
right,
with some notable exceptions. But lacrosse goalie, kind of anyone can play it because the goal's not that big, and that's gonna vary your positioning a lot. So as a smaller guy, I think probably I found more success with that. what I just demoed you, just because I I don't take up a lot of cage as is, and
Yeah.
being like square to the shooter is probably more of an advantage for me. Where if you're like Mike G, it's like that dude's pretty big, and him being just in that spot is probably more than good enough to cover more goal than I could even imagine covering. So
Yeah. Yeah. I hear
I
you.
think it just
Yeah.
depends.
Totally depends. Totally depends. Like,
Yeah.
and that's where I do. I'm 5'8", so I'm a smaller goalie as well. But that's where
Yep.
I do see a good advantage, and you can have great success being our height, right? Like, I mean, obviously, but
Yeah, you could do all right.
yeah. Will Mark is like, I think he's like 6'3", and I did this
Yep.
other video where he's got that wide base stance, right? And
Yeah.
and so he
Yeah.
can
It
kind of
looks
like,
crazy in person.
yeah, and you could kind of start with your heels on the goal, play like a real shallow arc, and as
Yep.
they start dodging, like I don't even really need to step. It's just like I just kind of like turn, I just kind
Yeah.
of turn my hips,
Yeah.
pivot my hips, and I'm in the like perfect position. And so that's another way to do it. But yeah, a lot of different ways to skin this cat of lacrosse goalie.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, very cool. And then what about like when you think about like playing a shallow arc? And playing and kind of coming out and challenging the shooter. How do you
Yep.
think about that? And how do you kind of coach that? What would you tell like a young goalie
Yeah.
who's thinking about that type of positioning?
I started playing around with that towards the end of my college career, stepping out. I would do it my personally, I would do it I would try to do it in situations when I knew the shooter was going to shoot and he
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of angle.
Yeah.
So basically I would take just a 1-2 step out. So like I'll stand up again.
Yeah.
Might as well. So I would take like because what a lot of younger goalies will do is they'll kind of step up with their feet all moving like that. Well, you need to make what I think is the best way to do this is just 1-2, and that's it, and just stop
Mm.
moving. Because a
Yeah.
lot of goalies get happy feet when they step out,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the problems come with positioning. But I like to do that a lot on like lower angle shots, especially dodges from behind, where the shooter has a low percentage of scoring anyway. You just take away any chance.
Yeah.
I know some bigger goalies like to do it on step downs, like time and room step downs, especially like Dylan Ward comes to mind.
Yeah.
Kind of like a box lacrosse goalie technique, basically.
Right.
And for me, that didn't work for me at all. So, again, it comes down to size, play style, all kinds of different factors.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think it's something you should rely on or probably even teach a goalie to do until they're a little bit older.
Interesting. Why
That's
why
just
is
a
that?
preference, because because there's already so much to think about,
Mm.
and I think keeping goalies simple up until a certain point is probably better, where it's just like you got your 5-step arc, you make the save like this. Once they master that, then you can introduce those kind of more advanced techniques. I think it's
Yeah.
kind of opinion preference, but
Sure. Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting because when I played, like I would, as the ball was sort of moving around, I would be very low to the goal line because it's just so much easier to track and be in the right position.
yeah,
As the ball's like moving around, and then like you, when the shot was imminent, and that included step downs for me. Like
okay,
I love to take a step out,
yeah,
and sort of challenge the shooter. But yeah, that was me, and I know a lot of goalies don't, and
yeah,
I think that's fine as well.
yeah. I always played a super low arc, like heels on the goal line, because
Oh,
to
okay.
be honest, I was pretty bad at positioning up until
Yeah.
college,
Right.
so that was the easiest one for me to do.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah,
hard. It's hard if you're way out there. I mean, like, I kind of think of it as like an ice hockey goalie.
yeah,
Like they're pretty deep into the goal until that shot's about ready to come, and then they come
yep,
out.
hmm
Obviously, it's way different, but
yep,
this that concept of angles is not.
yep.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah. All right. Well, I had a little question, Doc. We got way off track, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
What did you sort of struggle with, do you think, when you were learning the position of lacrosse goalie? Some of the challenges that you faced personally.
Positioning and clearing.
Positioning and
Uh,
clearing. Yeah.
yeah. So positioning. Yeah. I don't know why I struck. At first, it was because I was afraid of the ball up until, let's say, like
Oh yeah.
freshman year of high school. Uh, So I would, stand too far towards the pipe. I would say it was something else at the time, but that's what it was. And then I think because I had that habit of being out of position from a young age, and no one really corrected it. It just kind of stuck. So my tendency was always to go too far to the pipe, especially on whichever pipe I'm moving towards, especially
Yeah.
on sweep dodges and alley dodges.
Yeah.
Um, and I was actually lucky enough. At first, Adam Gilman was my college coach for 2 years.
Yep.
So that was pretty cool.
Right.
But I also worked with him a few times. Maybe it was only once, really, when I was younger. I think I worked with him one time. He showed me something super interesting where he's like, okay, I'm going to stand in the right position for a shooter being top right. And then he was like, now put the cones next to my feet where you can see goal. And it's like nothing. If you're standing in the right spot, the goal is tiny. As long as the shooter isn't top center, there's not a lot of goal to shoot at. So that visualization kind of thing that he showed me made it super clear how important positioning is. And from that moment on, I sort of tried to start to fix it, but took a
Yeah.
while. Yeah.
Yeah. And then how did you go about fixing that?
I was pretty lazy about it until college. But what I had to do basically was just walk my arc over and over again
Mm.
with a shooter or just even by myself. I just had to drill in the reps because I was
Yeah.
basically changing my fundamental muscle memory. So I had
Yeah.
my fundamental muscle memory was out of position. So what felt like the right spot was just not the right spot, right?
Got it. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just had to work in it. It was like thousands and thousands of reps, and then eventually I got it. It took a while
Yeah.
though.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
well, that's what it is, right? It's just
Yeah.
so much of goalie is muscle memory. So,
Yep.
drilling that into your muscles so that like they know how to do the right thing.
Yep.
But that's a cool concept too of like just how little you have to move, right? There's
Yeah.
so
You don't
many.
have to move that much. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you see like I've seen a lot of clips on Instagram of where like a goalie makes a save, and I'll be like, "Wow, this is a really nice save." And a lot of people say like, are you kidding me? Like he barely moved." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Exactly,
They just don't know. Yeah.
exactly, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what makes it a great save is he makes it look so easy. Or like
Yeah.
so many times they'll shoot stick side high, and like it'll be a goal because I drop my stick and now I do this
Yeah.
huge move to try and get back up. And so,
Uh-huh.
um, yeah, I mean, it's just you have to move surprisingly little.
Yes. The a good save from the perspective of a goalie is very different for
Yeah,
sure. Where
right.
it's like a good save to me is like an off hip save over here if your hand's way out in front, where you just move in a straight line as opposed to like a big sweeping dive, you know,
Right.
fundamentally speaking.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the big sweeping thing, like it looks cool, but it's definitely not as effective
Very slow. Yeah.
in the long term for making saves. Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
so there you go.
And and then for clearing, I think what happened, I was just so focused on learning how to save the ball that I forgot to clear. And
Oh,
then which I could kind of get away with all the way through high school. And then same thing, I got to college and I couldn't throw the ball more than 30 yards
oh wow.
accurately. Yeah. And it was a combination of my stick was strung poorly and I had terrible throwing mechanics. So it was the same. I would go out after every practice for like a year straight and just I saw this drill. I don't know who posted the video, but it was like you start 5 yards away, throw the ball off the goalpost, and you got to throw the ball until you hit the goal or the crossbar, sorry.
Uh-huh.
And then you back up 5 yards. And I would do that all the way until I got to the 50-yard line. Did that after practice. Maybe not after every practice, but after a lot of practices, um, for like a year. And that's kind of how I got my clearing under control. But I basically just never worked on it. I never even like thought about where I should be going or where I should throw the ball.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like, you make the save, you should probably look where the ball came from first, because
Yep.
the shooter's like, distracted. Then you should probably look for your breaking up middies.
Yep.
Then look for your poles. Okay, my poles are covered. Gotta jog it up, make it 2-on-1 with my pole. I never thought about any of that
Mm.
until I got to college. So throwing the ball is important, but also knowing what you're supposed to do in the clear at all think a lot of goalies ignore that
Yep.
because
Right.
it's, not very fun to think about that, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, it should be fun because what's
Yeah,
not fun is turning the
getting
ball
scored
over.
on.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, getting scored on. And what's not fun is like this sense of panic that some goalies describe to me when they make the save and they don't know what to do. Like, what should I do? Nobody's open. And a lot of it comes from the fact that you don't know like the strategy of the clear, right? Or you
Hmm.
don't have like a plan in place once you make that save. And you just outlined exactly what I agree with, which is right, like look for where the shot came from. If it's not
Yep.
there, look at the middies across the top. If it's not there, you got your defenders breaking out to the sides. And if that's
Yep.
not there, then you got to leave the crease and go out the back. And
Yep.
yeah, so I mean that's kind of
Yeah.
your strategy, but you should have that in mind and
Yep.
then know how to throw.
Yep. For sure. I even throwing is just reps and proper mechanics, obviously, but I even for a lot of the goalies I work with, I even made like a little document, like outlining specifically what you should mentally go through when you're in the clear. Because most of the goalies that struggle with clearing, it's not really throwing, it's decision making. So that I just have like if I'm working with a goalie and I'm like, oh wait, you have no idea how to clear. I'm like, I have them in my car. I'm like, here you go. Give that a read.
Yeah,
And
nice.
then see how you do next month.
What else is in that document? Did we hit on everything, or is there any other?
The I let me think. I going around the goal is the one thing I missed that you covered for me.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's a
But
lot. There's a lot there to that too. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to that, and kind of learning how to do that. And I recommend
yeah,
goalies, not only watch the save edits and kind of watch when goalies do leave the crease, but like notice how they do it, right? Because a lot of
yeah,
times I'll see a young goalie just sort of like, you make the save and it's not there. And they kind of like, instantly go back and kind of turn their head to everyone.
yeah.
Which there's a time and place to do that. But a lot of the top goalies, what you'll see is they'll just kind of like sort of
Hmm.
backpedal out of the goal to keep everything in my view, right? And so now I know if
Yeah.
someone starts to follow me, someone's got to be open because, the defenders have an extra man. So it's just about finding that person.
Yeah, absolutely. And backing up in particular, I mean, what you're literally increasing your field of view so you can see more
Right,
things.
right, right.
So, I mean, that's there couldn't be anything more important than that. That's why quarterbacks go backwards when they get the ball at first, not forward.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I
And then
always
also
thought,
you run into the chaos too, obviously. So,
yeah, it's
yeah.
funny that you mentioned quarterbacks because I was thinking that my clearing was like I was pretty good at clearing, and I actually credit a lot of it to playing like, 2-on-2 football or 3-on-3 football in the
Yeah.
courtyard with my friends and being the quarterback. Because so much of it is like, it's like that decision making, it's kind of like scrambling and kind of like buying yourself a little more time and making a throw on the run. So much of it is just that,
Yeah.
that free play that I think I really learned growing up playing a lot of
That makes perfect sense
football. Yeah. So,
because I never played football.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I
There
mean,
you
I
go.
never like played organized in football in a league, but definitely like
Yeah.
2-on-2 with my friends and stuff like that. So,
Gotcha.
um, yeah. Cool. So clearing and positioning, love it. I wanted to go back to
Yep.
that work ethic thing that you talked about. You
Sure.
said like my work ethic was, um, I forget the exact terminology, but like really good,
Yeah.
really, really strong. What,
Yeah.
how did you get there? What kind of drove you to have such a strong work ethic?
Oh, I just love it. I loved every aspect of it. I I think that was truthfully probably one of my only like strong qualities in athletics is I do just work harder than anyone else. So
Mm.
I've always been smaller. I've always been I'm a little fast, but no, not like where it's like a coach is like, "Oh my God," you know?
That guy's fast.
Yeah. Yeah, no, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So for me, I always any sport I've played, I've had to work hard, I guess, in order to compete. And then with lacrosse, taking that just kind of fundamental personality trait and combining it with like my favorite sport, it was easy. It was like
Mm.
all I wanted to do was play lacrosse. So if I wasn't playing lacrosse when I was 13 or 14, I was. Do you remember the Inside Lacrosse forums?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was all over those all day, just like
Yeah.
scanning for information. I don't know what I was looking for, but Maybe I found the answer. And then I would be stringing my stick. I'd be watching film. Like I would just if I wasn't in school, I'd be thinking or playing lacrosse. You know,
Love
so
it.
it's just
Yeah.
because I loved it.
Interesting. Yeah. I teach
Yeah.
I do some like virtual coaching, and one of the sessions is like the mental game, right? And I
Yep.
talk about how like there's this pyramid of like the different mental game elements. And like the base of the mental game is your love of the game.
Yeah.
Like that is
For sure.
if you don't have love of the game, then like your mental game is going to be so screwed, because you
Oh
know
yeah.
you're gonna run into hardships, right? You're gonna be on that wave and nosedive, and if you don't even like surfing to begin with, you're like,
Oh man.
what am I even doing out here, right? Like, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Look.
love of the
Yeah.
game I think is so key, and you got that, and that's awesome.
It would be pretty crazy to play lacrosse goalie and not love it, right?
Right.
Like that would be insane.
Some do,
Yeah,
some
for
do.
sure. I'd say this, I don't like to say this, but most kids I work with, they don't love it. They like it, you know, and
Yeah.
you can tell. And you work with them, you can get pretty good if you like lacrosse, but the kids that love lacrosse get really good.
Yeah.
That's anything, sports, school, whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not to say like there's not, bad things about, or things that stink about this position in particular, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, one of the questions that I had in the document was, what's your least favorite part about being a goalie? What was that for you?
Sure. Least favorite part. There's definitely a lot. Uh Man, I this is such a basic answer, but getting hit by the ball sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It hurts.
Yeah.
Like getting like I've never been a goalie that takes pride in like getting hit. Like I'm not one of those guys like I don't feel it anymore. Every time I got hit with a ball, it hurts so bad. So that's me at least. Like I get hit in the shin. You could ask any of my old teammates. I would like scream some kind of curse word.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd keep playing because I was having fun, but I that part sucks for sure.
Totally.
I
Totally.
don't like that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the youngsters see like the college guys and the pro guys bare legs, and like don't
Yeah.
realize that like at a young age, a lot of these dudes and girls for that matter got padded up.
Oh yeah.
And so like yeah, get padded up. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
why not? Yeah.
especially if you're one of those goalies that hates getting hit. I mean, some there's some freaks out there that love it, and
There are. Yeah.
if that's you, more power to you. But
Yeah, I wore foot so in college I wore football pads, the
yeah.
biggest cup I could find, the best chest like I pad, I don't know. There's like that macho ego thing with not wearing shin guards, but I have a feeling I feel like shin guards are going to at some point become a part of lacrosse because it's just getting too crazy. The shots are getting way too fast, and the best goalies right now are making mostly body saves. Oh,
Right.
like in the PLL, like Blaze Reardon is a great example of that, where he must be one of those guys that just has no pain because he just basically makes every save with his leg or his arm or his whatever,
Yeah.
you know, and then picks the ball up after like nothing happened. I don't know how he does
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially when we talk about sixes.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Did you see that picture of Brian Phipp's legs after the championship
Did you post
series?
that? I think I saw that.
I didn't put, he posted it himself. Yeah.
Somebody, yeah, I saw it not on his page, but another page. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, they were just like, yeah, I mean, it was like, I couldn't even see any like non-bruised part of his legs. It was
Yeah.
just like
Like
so,
what?
so
Yeah.
beat up.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
yeah, I've
and
been,
I've worked with coaches that would get I won't say any name obviously, but I've coached with other coaches that also weren't goalies that would tell our goalies to take their shin guards off.
oh
And
no,
I wasn't high in a high enough position at the time to, be like, "Hey, that's ridiculous." But that is ridiculous. Like, what do you it
that is
doesn't matter.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're not the one in goal, right?
No,
The goalie's the one in goal. He decides or she
especially
decides
if the
what
goalie's doing
pads.
good. Like, what do you
Yeah.
whatever you need to do.
I went on a hunt for like totally. I went on a hunt for like the best pads that I think. So my current stack. So there's these like
Sure.
they're called pro slides, and they're like made for like softball players, and they're basically like a compression leg sleeve that has shin and knee padding, but it's like a
Okay.
compression thing, and so it feels like really comfortable.
Yeah.
Love
That's
that. And
cool.
then there's another one called Thigh Pro, and they're meant for like baseball catchers,
Ah,
but
right.
like and which also like really helps because they it really helps lacrosse goalies because like um catchers we get hit on the inside of the thigh a lot and
Oh,
foot
so that's padding there.
so it has
Okay.
it kind of like wraps around right because catchers have that like knees open
Yep.
type of
Block the ball.
stance,
Yeah.
yeah. And they're also compression and they're not like max protect, so like you get hit there and like you're still gonna kind of feel it but like it doesn't leave that
Yeah. You
those
don't.
bruises that
Yeah.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I've been
That is
promoting the crap
interesting.
out of those. So because I think that like not only do they look cool, they
Right.
protect, and I think and they have mobility.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. I don't know when. Yeah. It's pretty because if you look at literally every other goalie, not every other goalie, but most other goalies in most sports, legs are padded up out the wazoo,
right,
crazy helmet, full body arm protection. It's
yeah,
basically lacrosse and soccer goalies, and in soccer the ball's softer, so it's a little bit different. But
right.
it still really hurts, but nothing like a lacrosse ball, which is like for all intents and purposes, it's a rock.
I know, right? It's
Like
solid,
it's pretty. I don't know.
solid rubber
Right?
on the shin bone. Yeah, I think it will evolve. I think it will. I mean, it has to because like
Probably
the
should.
technology of the sticks and like the athletes is just getting insane. Where
And
I wrote
somebody's gonna like break their whole shin bone
totally.
pretty soon,
Totally. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I wrote about this because, a lot of goalies didn't wear pads at the very beginning, right? And it
Hmm.
made like tons of sense because like have you seen the sticks? They're like 60 pounds. They have no pocket. And so like in
Hmm.
order to shoot, you have to like crank your whole body and you could probably
Yeah.
shoot like 40 miles an hour.
Right.
And nowadays, like, high school kids can rip it over 100. So
Oh,
like
I know. Yeah. Like
um and it's just changed, and I think the padding needs to get there as well.
I agree. I agree. I'm happy you agree upon that because I've thought that for a while. I
Yeah, yeah,
and it doesn't seem to be a common opinion, but I hope that changes because it's bizarre.
yeah. I imagine like when you got to Utah, then like, and you actually got some goalie coaching, your game kind of evolved, or you got significantly better. Is that true?
Yeah. So my I've told this story before, but I told it in like my senior final speech to my team. Uh, I so I walked onto the team. I didn't get recruited. I had other offers, but they were schools I really just didn't want to go to. So I was like, maybe it was pretty dumb, but I was like, I'm gonna take my chance to try to walk onto a Division 1 team. And it worked out. I was the only one that tried out that did. So it was probably part luck and part, whatever. I don't know. I managed to make it on the team. And I remember when that first depth chart came out, I was like, oh, I'll probably be like the third goalie. Nope, number 6, the last one. And I was like, whoa, oh God, oh no. So, man, what was the question again? I'm sorry. I totally.
Just about your game evolving once you get
Oh,
to Utah and start getting some goalie
yeah.
coaching.
Yeah, man, seeing that was a wake-up call. I mean, I was never like an All-American in high school or anything, but I was always pretty good. Like, I was always considered a really good goalie, and to be like number 6 on a whole team was devastating, and it was awful. So you know, yeah, from it could have only gone up from there would be my answer, and I worked as hard as I could and got pretty far. So, and it was just combination of great coaching. I had first Adam Gilman, then Andrew McMinn. So, awesome. Because I don't know if you know my coach McMinn. He played at Providence. He played goalie, and he was a really good goalie himself.
Nice.
Uh, so we had that resource in my last 3 years. So yeah, combination of really good coaching and working as hard as I could every day to fix all my problems led me to, actually getting some playing time eventually.
Nice. Yeah. What is the process for walking on to a team?
It was a very unique situation because it was right when it was the second year Utah was Division 1.
Okay.
So the way that coaching staff recruited at the time was they basically they took some number of kids that were definitely on the team, and then they basically just let like whatever, like 15, 20 of us try to walk on or whatever.
Hmm.
Or maybe it was like 10, 15. I don't remember the numbers, but there were like 10 or 8 or so kids that were actually recruited that were, unless they messed up, weren't going to get cut. Then there was like 10 of us that, um, could possibly walk on.
Got it.
So, and it was basically, they did like a hell week for a hell month, we'll say.
Yeah.
And, um, half those kids ended up, not being on the team.
And were those kids like from Utah's club program or like what those
New recruits.
new recruits? Okay.
Well, half recruits, half, people trying to
And but so
make.
that so they were like you, where they just went to the University of Utah and they're like, all right, I'm gonna try out for the lacrosse team.
Yeah, half of them. I don't remember how many exactly, but
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. I was just curious about that process because
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever like had anybody who we never talked about walking onto a team, but I imagine like if you're gonna do it at an like it's not as common with more established programs, but I mean I don't really
Oh,
know what the process is. You email the coach and be like, hey, I'd like
you
to try out
email
for
the
the
coach
team.
and pray. Yeah. I emailed like every school I was interested in. It's like, hey, would you mind if I come try? And Brian Holman was the only one that responded. So that's where I went.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean you were living in Park City at the time too, so it probably was pretty easy to get over there and
Yeah, I
try
lucked out
out.
there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. What was it like working with Adam Gittleman? Because he's always been one of my not only one of my favorite goalies, but like, when we talk about goalies that I looked up to, it was always Adam Gittleman, just because um, he's shorter, right, and a great
Yep.
goalie. And I
Yep.
remember he's episode like 17 of the podcast. This is probably going to be like 270 something, 17. So like I reached out and he's like, "Yeah, I'll do
Yeah.
it." And I was just like, "Whoa!" Like
Whoa.
first
Yeah.
first moment where it was just like fanboy
Yeah.
type of scenario. So like awesome for him for doing such an awesome interview when the podcast was like nothing. So talk
Yeah.
to me about working with Adam.
Yeah. His intensity is intense. But he's very, in particular when he's playing, he plays with an intensity in his voice, in his pace of play, and his movement that I've never seen before. So
Mm.
he's just ready to go. When he's playing lacrosse goalie, he's probably the most dialed in guy I've watched play. Um, and obviously one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah.
And when he's coaching and describing goal, he's I can't think of any specific examples, but he's very creative. Like he likes to try different things. He likes to like maybe sometimes go on a knee, maybe sometimes stay up, try this drill, try that drill. He just liked to try things. He was always trying to push the boundary and innovate. That's when I think about him, that's what I think about for sure.
Yeah, love it. What about
Yeah.
the other goldies that you sort of grew up learning from? Who comes to mind, and what do you think you kind of took from their game to yours?
I loved watching Brett Queener when I was younger,
Yeah,
and I like to go try to score goals in high school and middle school too, which
yeah,
I did a few times, but usually I just get blown up and scored on. uh, but I think what I liked about Brett Queener more than him just scoring goals was just how kind of he played the game different than anyone else did and did it at a very high level. So just the way he saved the ball, the way he cleared the ball, it was all super unconventional. And
yeah,
I really admired that.
yeah. I think when you watch him play, he's like a lacrosse guy, right?
Right,
He's a
exactly.
great goal. It's like Blaze. Like Blaze,
Exactly.
plays indoor lacrosse, but he doesn't play goalie. He plays forward.
Yep.
And just because he's just so good at lacrosse
Hey,
and
they're
that
just good
like
at lacrosse.
yeah,
Right.
and that translates into the goalie position. Like you see, what you see Blaze and what you see Queener do and did. You don't see any other goalies do that. And
Hmm.
so yeah, I still love watching Queener.
Yeah.
Throw
That
on
was
those
definitely my
Queener
favorite guy to
highlights.
watch.
Throw on those
Yeah.
Queener highlights. It's a good time.
Yeah.
Really good time. What about the drills that you like to do, or now that I guess you're kind of coaching, playing days maybe behind you, but when you were playing, what are some like top drills that you'd like to do?
as you know, I basically trained myself, so I got pretty ridiculous and creative at times. But what actually worked was the most basic things. It was like walking the line,
Hmm.
playing wall ball and pretending to make saves, walking my arc, throwing clears. Um, one, I guess I've showed this on my page before, but let me see if I even have it in here. But one thing I don't see a lot of goalies doing, I might not have it. Do you know what a reaction ball is?
I do.
Oh, I do have it. Okay. Well, I used to play wall ball with this reaction ball.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have anyone to shoot on me most of the time because nobody was playing lacrosse. And the people that were playing lacrosse weren't very good often. So, with some exceptions, of course, but I wanted to train every day. So I needed to figure out how. So I would play wall ball with this, and it was, sort of like getting shot on because it's random. Uh, so definitely worth picking one of these up for a billion drills, but that's my favorite one to do with it.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. So if you're just listening to the audio, it's like this, and you should definitely get one. They're pretty cheap, and they're like $7 or so on Amazon. But it's a
Yeah.
ball with like these little nubs on either all around it, and so the bounces are random
Yeah.
off the wall. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So wall ball, walking the line,
Yeah.
reaction ball. What else?
And then you can take a lot of these fundamental drills and just basically make them hard. So I I don't have it with me, but I have like wrist weights and that can also be ankle weights. So you just throw those on. Now your drill's harder. You do that
Yep.
with resistance bands.
Yep.
Basically, just find a way to make yourself tired while going through the motions.
Yep.
Going through that's not a good way to put it, but while working on your muscle memory, we'll say, I
Yeah.
think that's a really good way to go about it because you need your muscle memory to work when you're tired too. So that's how I always
Especially.
thought about that. Yeah, yeah,
Especially you
right.
need to like that's it's even more important when you're tired.
Yeah,
I remember we had a basketball coach. I didn't play lacrosse growing up. I played all these other sports, but I had a basketball coach, and he would make us like run sprints, run sprints, run sprints, run sprints, and then we'd shoot three free throws. And
yeah,
he'd like anybody can hit a free throw when they're fresh, right?
yeah.
But can you hit a free throw when when you've been running up and down the court for the entire game? And same idea of lacrosse goalie is that like, yeah, like we're not sprinting up and down the field, but it's still tiring. It's still
Oh, for
very
sure. Yeah.
physically exhausting. And can you remain like mentally there? And can you, still be just as explosive in overtime, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, for sure. That's that's everything basically. So well, I'll add to that kind of speaking more, continuing on that explosive side of things. Uh, a lot of this just athletes in general, I guess, but my world is lacrosse goalie. People should, if they can and they have access to it and the resources, learn how to lift properly, in particular in a
Mm.
way that will translate well to lacrosse goalie.
Mm.
So stuff like, so you can just do shoulder press, right? Just, nice constant motion. Or you can make it the lacrosse goalie version, which would be like controlling the rep down, then exploding up, right? Because when you're playing lacrosse goalie, you're exploding to the ball. Same
Right.
like if you would the squat, same thing. You would, oh, control it on the way down, explode up, right?
Got it.
Integrating some of that into your training and your lifting, I think is super beneficial and often looked over. And
Interesting.
even, yeah, even like strength training coaches, when they come into high schools or colleges, they'll make the training basically for the middies because, they're the best athletes and they need to be the most athletic. The
Right.
training is basically centered around getting better at shooting and getting faster and all of that. But if you were to like specify that to lacrosse goalie, it would look a little bit different, I think. Right.
Interesting.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That makes total sense. I never lifted like that. I still don't.
yeah,
But
that's a
so yeah, basically controlling the weight on the way down and then exploding it up and
exploding.
control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
make it like lacrosse goalie, basically.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
all kinds of technical. I'm kind of a nerd about that stuff, and there's all kind of technical terminology that
Yeah.
goes with all of that. But just to give the basic idea so everyone can understand.
Love it. Did you ever do
Yep,
any plyometrics training?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, that stuff is awesome. Again, all this I started way too late in my career, but it all works very well, and I
Same.
integrate it with my own coaching now as well.
Same. Yeah. Yeah. a plyometrics guy present at the lacrosse goalie summit, and
Oh, cool.
yeah, and it was a really cool session because he just got all of these drills and all of these exercises, and just talked about like with the plyometrics, you're making your joints like springy,
Oh,
fast,
yeah.
fast,
Hmm.
fast. And as he was just saying that, I'm just like, yeah, like that's what we need as lacrosse goalies. Like you've got to have that quick reaction, and you can't be slow. You got to be springy and fast.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's just something to consider with your training. Don't just, a lot of people will just lift to lift, run to run,
Yeah,
but you can modify a lot of that to being lacrosse goalie specific so you can actually get better at what you need to get better at, right?
right. Well, lacrosse goalies don't run to run, right? If you're playing lacrosse goalie,
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Bad example.
maybe we
Definitely
lift to
don't. Yeah.
lift. We lift to lift, that's for sure. But I
Yeah.
don't know.
Definitely
Most
don't run ever.
there's a very large percentage of the lacrosse goalie pie that accepted this position because there's way less running,
A lot of them.
myself
Yeah.
included.
Nice. Yeah.
Um,
One more thing to add. This isn't really a
yeah,
drill.
please.
This is I guess athletic advice because I'm just reflecting on mistakes I made. People overlook like basic health and wonder why they're not performing at a high level. Like you got to sleep, eat good food, and drink water, and do the basic stuff like that. So before you
Yeah,
even think about all this crazy stuff we're talking about here, make sure you're sleeping 8 hours, drinking enough water, and eating a relatively healthy diet. Look into that too, because that's a game changer.
100%.
Yep.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think people don't factor in how much those basic elements of health impact like how you feel and how your mental state and your
Emotionally, yeah.
right emotionally and whether you feel like going out there and training or not.
Hmm.
And but then also the physical side of like, are you able to perform at your top? And 100%,
Yes, sir.
100%
Mhm.
agree. Yeah, in college, yeah, I just ate like crap and drank beer. And guess what? Like I probably would have been way better if I had if I had taken some of that basic advice,
Right.
right?
It's okay to like enjoy and live life, but
Yeah.
like there's a line, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to be a serious athlete, like it's all, I mean, yeah, it's okay to enjoy life, but like these are basic requirements, I
For
think.
sure. Yeah, if this is
It's
your
funny.
thing, then well,
Yeah. Yeah. The
yeah.
basic things we overlook. I just released my podcast with a vision guy. And like, he
Yeah.
was talking about how, I mean, in addition to all these like really advanced vision drills and things that he's like, just go get like an eye exam.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
saw
like
that.
so
But
many
yeah.
people that like, are probably have like problems with their vision and just like,
Yeah.
if you get that fixed, guess what? You're gonna be a
Now you
better
can see the
goal.
ball.
Yeah, now you can see the ball.
Yeah,
So,
pretty important.
yeah. Um, what about like the mental game? Did you guys like train that a lot? When you think about mental toughness, what sort of lessons come to mind for you?
Yeah, at the University of Utah, we were very lucky. We had a full-time sports psychologist. We'd meet with him every 2 weeks.
Nice.
I majored in psychology. I'm gonna go back to school here in 1 or 2 years to study sports psychology. So this is kind of
It's your
good question.
domain,
This is my
baby. All
realm.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not an expert in my own psychology, but I know what I'm supposed to tell people to do, is what I
Okay.
say, because,
Yeah.
it's easier said than done for sure.
Yeah.
But no, it's absolutely huge. And a beautiful part about lacrosse goalie in particular is that usually when you make a mistake, you get scored on, you have a second to think. Because other athletes, they these kind of psychological techniques are harder to implement because they're just running the whole time. There's no time to think.
Right.
But you have like a good 1 to 2 minutes after a goal goes in on you to go through whatever process you need to. And there's all kinds of different techniques uh, for this, but uh, and I can go into some of those, but yeah, it's unbelievably important. And just like basic health, mental health is also often overlooked. I'm sure most lacrosse goalies, mental health is definitely an afterthought. If you've met a lot of them, they're a little bit, they got screw loose. That's like
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
stereotype, but it's kind of true. So for
Yeah.
us especially, it's huge.
Yeah. It's interesting about what you said there about yeah, we do have that time to sort of reflect on our on our
Yeah.
mistake or on that goal
Yep.
given up, which in some ways is bad because I do think
Yeah.
that like in basketball, like or another sport, even like sixes, like when you get scored on, you just keep going. Like you don't
Yeah.
go down this mental spiral. You don't have time
Yeah.
to like think. You just keep playing. And in many ways, like that's you have to be like that and
Yeah.
field lacrosse where like I have this short memory, like, yeah, I'm gonna go through my little reset routine, right? Which I've coached and we can talk about, but like I'm just gonna keep going for that next save, keep always
Yeah.
going for that next play. Um,
Yep.
I'd love to just if you mentioned you got a couple lessons, if you have one off the top of your head that
Yeah.
we could talk about, that'd be cool.
Yeah. There's yeah, a few ideas. Some of them more simple, which will probably be better for most people. Some of them a little bit
Yeah,
more
yeah,
wordy. I like to a really easy cue that any goalie can implement is to have a we'll say verbal or physical reset button,
yeah,
where it's like you say a word and now you're back to the present, or I
right,
had a teammate that had uh like he would sharpie the word ball on his glove, and
yep,
he would touch that and back to the present.
yeah,
Basically, your goal as a lacrosse goal is to be completely present. If you're thinking about the past, that's not good. If you're thinking about the future, that's also not good. You want to be completely present in, what a psychologist would call the flow state, where
mm-hmm,
things are just kind of happening and you're just observing and you're free of basically ego, right?
yeah,
Uh, then so that's probably the easiest one for most people to implement and most useful. Our sports psychologist, Dr. Nick Galley, brought up a technique that I've seen success with a couple other goalies that I've worked with. It's called the four F's. So the first one is F it, like the bad word. Uh, Fix it, forget it, focus. So you basically create a structure in your mind where you go through that process in 20 seconds. So first is F it. You pick something where you get to express your emotion, whether that's like swearing or hitting your goalpost. You get like 3 seconds to do that. Then the next chunk of time, you do fix it. So if you're a goalie, this is why it's great that we have this time. You can like literally practice going through that motion,
yeah,
the mistake you made. Then you'll have a trigger for forgetting that the event happened because you got to move on and have a goldfish memory.
yeah.
And then you have a separate cue that is focusing, so becoming present. So in that technique, you separate forgetting the play and focusing on the present as two separate entities. So
I
that's a
like
little
it.
bit more complex one.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. The only thing that's weird, I don't know. For me, like that outburst of hitting the post or like yelling, like to me, I'm not a fan of that because I want to be like
Yeah.
a sturdy leader, right? I don't want the opponents to know they're in my head. I don't want
Yep.
my own
The
teammate.
leadership aspect for
Yeah, I don't want
sure.
my own
Yeah.
teammates to know like, well, man, what's going on with Damon? Like he's really lost it. But
Right.
I understand the idea of like if you're that goalie that like feels that emotion, feel it, right? I just maybe not act
Maybe
out
not
on it.
outwardly.
Yeah,
Right.
just
Yeah.
for me personally.
I
But
have a
yeah, and the
similar
other
thought
ones.
on it for sure.
Yeah.
Um, ooh, I had one more, but it slipped my brain. If it comes back, I'll let you know. But
Yeah,
yeah,
all good, all good. Yeah, I did like what you said earlier about to like the reset elements. I know I got this one cool trigger from an ice hockey goalie, and he'd shoot up the water out of his water bottle after he gave up a goal, right? As part of his
yeah.
reset routine, shoot up the water into the air and just find like one water droplet and just like follow
I'll
that
just
one
track it.
all track it all the way to the ground, and then when boom, as soon as it hit, then he was ready to go.
Okay,
I thought that was
that's
a
cool.
cool.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
like
thought that was
that.
pretty cool.
That is interesting.
But
Oh,
yeah,
I
whatever
remember
whatever
the
works
other.
for you, right?
Yes, absolutely. The other one I remembered, I used this one a lot, was I would find myself like thinking in the middle of somebody dodging, like about whatever. And so, like, just like imagine like thinking about what am I gonna have for dinner, and somebody's about to throw a lacrosse ball at you. That would happen to me. I don't know why. Like even in a game. So what I started doing was I just started literally saying out loud, ball, 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 ball. And of course, my defenders and the attackman thought I was crazy.
Yeah,
But that, for whatever reason, that kept me present and got all the exterior thoughts out of my brain.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works, right? I know some goalies told me they would have trouble like with focus, which is hard when you're young. I mean, it's hard
Yeah.
when you're like an adult in
Yeah,
college,
it
but
is.
now like when you're talking about like I'm 11 and it's like hard to focus because I'm 11. But anyway, just like
Right.
sort of like when the ball, especially when the ball gets on the other end of the field, and they would just be like, looking at the flowers or like really out of it, announcing the game of like, ooh, that was a nice pass, 34, oh, great dot, like just like being involved in it by announcing it. I thought was a cool thing, and it's worked for some goalies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So love it,
Yeah,
man.
I've seen Focus Lacrosse. The Instagram page has a few videos on that. He'll have like uh his students like say what they're doing kind of out loud to keep them present. I think that's
Yeah.
interesting too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Coach Tim has presented at the goalie summit, and he demoed a bunch of drills like that. And a lot of
Nice.
it's like he'll have like goalies like turn and just like say like what they see, So it's like red
Yeah.
car, bathroom stall, and then
Awesome.
yeah. So I mean, just kind of like picking up these things, but also having your mind work and then being able to concentrate and make that save. Because a lot of
Right.
times it's easy to like when the coach is warming up, right? And I just see the shots coming at me and there's no chaos. And then you add all this like chaos of people running around and defenders cutting through the crease and here comes the shot and you can't focus. So
Right.
maybe that's why he calls it focus lacrosse.
It probably is.
Figured it out. Um, Very cool. So talk to me then about adaptive. I know you do obviously you got the page going and putting out cool training videos, and then you do some personal coaching as well.
Yeah, so I do in person, I do lessons obviously, and I do one or two clinics a month, usually smaller, like 5 to 10 goalies. Which I like to keep that small so I can, actually focus. And I'll have one or two Division 1 shooters come. So, keep it a competitive and challenging environment.
Yeah.
So that's what I got going on in person. That's how it started. That's how that's kind of the core. Uh, Adaptive goaltending online is what you see on social media, all the advice, tips, and tricks of all the various aspects of lacrosse goalie. And then, I do uh, I'll have some goalies send in film to me and I review that and, send video back of my feedback on that. I help goalies make highlight tapes. Uh, I do some mental performance coaching as well, where just hop on a Zoom just like this and kind of talk through what they're struggling and what my perspectives are on that. I make practice plans, kind of just stuff a little bit all over the place, but that's what it is right now. I'm looking to refine it more in a few months and get it to be a little bit more of a legitimate business. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's been awesome. I started with 0 followers like 11 months ago, and
Yeah.
it's grown pretty damn fast. So
Awesome. Well, congrats, man. Keep
yeah,
keep keep at it. I know I follow and enjoy every lacrosse goalie video that's out there, but yeah, I mean I enjoy it. So keep
yeah.
going.
Thank you.
Awesome, man. And then where can they find you?
Yeah, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. TikTok, hard to say for me. Adaptive goaltending, all lowercase, no
Beauty.
spaces.
Beauty. Well, Connor, thanks for coming on the show, sharing your story.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, if you had to leave the goalies out there with a final piece of advice, what would that be?
It would be to enjoy the game and love every second of it and cherish your moments with your teammates because it'll go by like this in a blink of an eye. Just the little things, like especially if you're in college, you get to have dinner and breakfast together before games. You
Hmm.
get to have these kind of intense meetings where you really get to know each other. You're just hanging out with your teammates, being on the field with your boys. Like just enjoy every moment of it. It's amazing. And I guess just don't take it so seriously. Do it because you love it.
Beauty. Connor, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.